I'm Andy Erwin, and this is the Storytellers. Coming up on this edition of the Storytellers, this one is really personal to me. I'm really excited to have this guest on. When I started my career, in TV, 25 years ago or so, there were just these people that kind of became role models for me, became just an amazing voice of encouragement in our journey as we kind of chase film. And this person I worked with on sidelines of sports events for years. And she was the reporter that I was assigned to as a camera guy when I worked at ESPN. She's since gone on to become a sports icon. To see, you can't turn on the television without seeing her face and her reporting. She's become an advocate for women's sports in particular. She's one of the faces of the WNBA. And has gone on to be an amazing leader in storytelling around the world. And the thing that I like about her is she always gets to the human side of the story. It's never just about the sports, it's about the person. So there can be no other. There's a short list of who I could be talking about. And of course, I'm talking about my friend, Holly Rowe.
I'm so excited to be here because I think when we say we go way back, we go way back, like over 20 years, right?
Yep, it has. It was 2004 when we were working together first.
So literally 20 years. So I'm so excited because I'm super proud of you, but I'm happy for both of us because I feel like we have a lot of similar values and our stories kind of started in the same place and it was branched out. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it was so much fun because, so for those of you that don't know, it was before I was a filmmaker. I was a cameraman for ESPN, and Holly was my sideline reporter, and I was the one tagging along with you. And over the years, we had so many amazing memories. There's all these reporters that I've worked with over the years. There was, I started with Adrian Karsten. He was my first. And then Stuart Scott at the Super Bowl one year was his cameraman. But everybody asked me, who was your favorite? And I'm like, hands down, it was Holly Rowe. And so you were my favorite. We had so much fun. Those years were incredible.
Incredible. But I need people to get a clear picture of this because it's not like we're just casually standing there and you just walk up and, you shoot and use your camera. When I say we were in the trenches together, because if you've ever really been on a sideline, you have to run from one side to another. You do, and you have guys pulling cable behind you. To be a sideline camera person is one of the most grueling jobs in all of sports, maybe all of camera work, because you are running, you're sweaty, you're hot. And then I run with you. And so we'd be like, okay, you have to get here. You've got to get this shot. You've got to get here. You got to get this interview. So when I say like we have been through some battles together, whether fields are getting stormed and we're like fighting people off and helping each other, running, like cables tripping us, all this stuff. Like we have been through a lot of really hard situations together. And so don't just sell it short like you were the camera guy. Like we have been in the battles of the sidelines together.
You sell yourself short because if you're not going to let me off the hook, I'm not going to let you off the hook either. You are the most tenacious at getting to like the middle, wherever the middle of the action was. That's where I had to look for you. So my job was always to be like, as a camera guy, because I was having to shoot the game as well, but I always had to keep my head on a swivel of where's Holly, because I got to get to her quick. And at the end of the game, when all the, everybody's converging on the middle for the handshake between the coaches, you would just throw yourself into the pile like a mosh pit. And I would always be like, I can't keep up with her because she's going and like pushing people. And you're always in the middle of the action. I always loved how aggressive you were.
Yeah, it's like you got to get the story right. And there's a lot of other cameras. There's a lot of people. If fans are rushing the field, it is not for the faint of heart. So we definitely had to stick together. So anyway, but then I'm really proud of you because I feel like you took your ability to shoot sports. Mm-hmm. And then you've gone on to make sports movies. And I always appreciate some of your sports movies because your football scenes were the best I've ever seen. Like, looked so realistic because you know what
Nice.
football should look like. So I think that you were able to take that talent that you had at ESPN and really use it in your next career to become, big time famous film director.
I'll fill in until that guy shows up. But you know, you were always supportive in those years because we talked about. I mean, I think we both have that storytelling, love of storytelling. That's what I've always loved about your reporting. Is there's a lot of people that can report just the facts. It's a whole nother level to get to the why and the heart underneath it. And you've always been that kind of a reporter of really finding the human story in it. And so I think we always connected on that level. But in those early years, while I was a cameraman, we were also developing these stories we wanted to tell. And so, like, we had our documentary, The Crossland Towers. Then eventually we did Woodlawn. And like, I remember when we did a little watch party for Crossland Towers. And I was like, and Scott Johnson, our director at the time, who I still adore that man, Scott had set up this screening for the whole crew to watch it. And I walked in and you were handling catering and like doing all this stuff behind the scenes. And I'm like, oh, what a sweetheart. It was amazing. I always loved that you supported it.
No, I love people who are passionate about what they're doing. Like, I feel like I'm good at my job because I care about it so deeply. I am so passionate about sports. And so when I see people that kind of find their thing and they're passionate about it, like I'm all in. I want to be your biggest cheerleader and support you because I know what that feels like. And that feeling of chasing what you love, that's really one of the best feelings in the world. So I always want to support that.
Well, one of the moments was, when the only Super Bowl I ever shot was Super Bowl 36. It was Tom Brady's first against Kurt Warner, and so I was Stuart Scott's cameraman for that. And I remember interviewing Kurt Warner, and I was just the camera guy in the whole crowd, getting the interview for ESPN afterwards, and never thinking that years later we'd be telling his story. And so it's kind of cool to kind of go full circle. But with that movie, the thing that was exciting was it involved somebody you were close to.
This is the special part of the relationship, right? So, like, you and I met 20 years ago. My son was a little kid. He was, I think, 3 years old at the time, 4 years
Wow.
old. And, we become a family. We travel every week together. I really think our ESPN crew is like a family.
Yep.
So, fast forward all these years and you're directing these big time movies. And my son has grown up and his passion is movies and directing. And you put him in the Kurt Warner movie. I like to think, I think he auditioned, or did he?
He did.
I like to think he earned his way.
He did.
I thought he did. But you were kind enough to then support me and my son's dream. And that has always meant the world to me. And I think he was cute in the movie. I thought he was really cute.
He's good. He's really, really well. Like, it was funny because when I reached out to his name's McKylan, and McKylan's a good looking kid. And I reached out to McKylan, and you had put me on his radar earlier because we had done Woodlawn, and you did so many things to help bring awareness to that story. So when it came to American Underdog, I was looking at and you said, just remember, McKylan just graduated from drama school. He's really talented. You ought to take a look at him. She was like, you said to his credit, he said, no favors. He's talented enough. Get it on his own, and just take a look. So I gave him a call and I said, McKylan, your connections get you the audition, but your talent has to get you the job. And I said, so I'm going to give you every opportunity to get a look, but you got to be good enough. And then he auditioned, and I showed the audition to the other producers. They're like, oh, he's really good. So he came in and he did a scene. He plays in the movie. He plays the grocery store clerk that Kurt works at. When he's still trying to make it into football. And we had this one small scene for him, just one scene. And he's in it with Zachary Levi, who plays Kurt. And they're throwing some groceries like football. And it got to the end of it. And my brother, John, came up to me. He's like, that kid's really good. And I don't think I ever let my brother know that it was your son. That was just my information. But I said, that's Holly's son. And he's like, no way. He's like, I was thinking we need to have an audience perspective to the end of the movie, the everyman's point of view. He's like, what if we wrote a whole scene for him at the end of the movie and he becomes the audience's point of view into the story? I'm like, that's brilliant. So we added stuff, brought him back, and he became a more major part of the movie. So it was really cool.
I love it. And that movie has gone so well. I can't even tell you, like, still, even this week, every time I'm on a flight and I'll be sitting in first class and people have their TV screens on, like, I'll see that movie pop up. People are watching American Underdog like crazy. And I just love it. I think it was one of, maybe was it your most successful commercial hit yet, or how did that go?
It was one of them. You know, it was still during COVID. It was one of those ones where theatrically it did really well, but it was like a juggernaut afterwards. And so it's been, it continues to kind of, and a lot of really good sports movies are like that. Like Rudy was like that. Hoosiers was like that. They found their track record even stronger after the theatrical. And so it's one of those, and proud to do that story. For you, I want to talk a little bit about your journey, because I've always been fascinated. I think the thing about you is we've been friends for a long time, but you don't like to draw a lot of attention to yourself. It's you're there to kind of reflect other people's stories. But I've always been interested in your journey. So, you know, you were at BYU, and then I think you transferred to Utah. And where did you first fall in love with sports? And where did you first say, like, I want to tell stories with sports? Like, where did that story come from?
Yeah, so my love affair with sports really came from my dad. And so I really appreciate my dad. His name is Del Rowe. A lot of people think the former Penn State linebacker Dave Rowe is my dad, and he's not. But I did meet him once, and he said he would be proud to be my dad because he thinks I've done a good job in football. So I like that.
There
But
you
my
go.
dad was just into sports. He lettered in 12 different sports in high school. He was a tiny guy. He was 5'3", and he got a boxing scholarship to the University of Utah. So my dad was just into all kinds of sports.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate him because he never treated me like a girl. Like
Wow.
he took me to every sporting event. I went to my first college football game when I was 5 years old,
Huh.
BYU, and I just got hooked. And so, like, my most vivid memories, I can remember exactly the BYU bowl game in 1976. I was 10 years old.
Wow.
I actually went during COVID, you know, when we were all stuck at home, I started cleaning out my garage, and I found all of these cutout newspaper clippings. Like, I want you to flash back to this 14-year-old little girl in Utah.
Hmm.
And I was like with scissors cutting out every article ever written about BYU winning the Holiday Bowl. It was this miracle comeback. They were down by 20 points with 3 minutes and 48 seconds left. In fact, that really should be your next movie.
Okay.
It's the greatest comeback in sports. They were playing the Pony Express with Eric Dickerson and Craig James, the SMU,
SMU.
the height of SMU. And BYU came back and won that game after being down 20 points with 3 minutes and 48 seconds left to go.
Wow. You were there.
I was there. And so I had saved every newspaper clipping, and I still have them. I decided I wouldn't throw them away. I'm like, these are going to be with me forever. But so I just grew up as a college football fan. I wasn't a woman that was a fan, a girl that was a fan. I just love college football. And, you know, people always ask me what's my favorite sport to cover. It really is probably outside of my child, my greatest love of life. Because I covered college football. I'm coming up on my 29th season
Man.
for ESPN. And I have only missed one college football weekend in 29 years because of COVID.
Wow.
So I just want people to appreciate that I have shown up through rain, snow, sleet, heat, fog, blizzards, all the things for 29 straight years. And I have been there every Saturday. And I'm really proud of that streak because I think it speaks to true love and passion and respect for college football.
That's amazing. And I've like being on the sidelines.
You've been with me.
Like, I remember some of my most like miserable weather condition moments, like just, you know, whether that was in, you know, Miami at a Hurricanes game with water that's 3 inches deep on the sidelines, or the coldest moment I can remember was one year, I think we did the Big 12 championship together. It was in Kansas City, and that was so cold.
That's the worst it's ever been. I want to say it was like maybe 10 below, and there was snow and frozen water down the steps. So fans were like tobogganing down the steps. And I had on like ski gear and like 5 layers, and I feel like I got frostbite. Like, that was bad.
Like, I looked over and you're not like, and you got a good poker face because you like game face on, not flinching. Like, you were just like, but I'm like sitting there beside you trying not to shiver too much where the lens is like shaking. And I'm like, I don't want to do this job anymore. I'm done. I gotta get somewhere warm.
We're gonna die out here. So one thing you may not know is so the night before that game, we were in Kansas City, and it was Nebraska, Oklahoma,
Yep.
huge game. And Bob Stoops was still at Oklahoma, Bill Callahan at Nebraska, and I got to do an interview with Tom Osborne in the sideline. I think you actually shot that
Yeah.
sideline interview with Tom Osborne. And the night before that game, I was so violently ill, I took myself to the hospital. I went to the
Oh,
ER. I ended up having to get IVs. I was deathly ill. But I showed up and I worked that game in the most miserable conditions of all time. And then I got back to the hotel room and I was so sick. I had to cancel my flight. I couldn't fly. I had to stay an extra day because I was so violently
oh.
sick. But I worked that game.
And me, who's worked with you for years, I didn't even know a hint of that. Like poker face, like stone cold, game face on. It was amazing. As you kind of got into reporting and started, pursuing that, the career, like who were some of the inspirations for you? Was there other storytellers where you're like, that's how I want to do this job, or I want to emulate until you find your voice?
Yeah, I really have to give Leslie Visser a lot of credit. She
Yeah.
was working for CBS Sports. She was one of the first women doing the NFL. She did the Final Four college men's basketball. And I went and did an internship in, gosh, I want to say like 1991 or two at CBS Sports in New York City. And I knew wanted to be a sports announcer. I just didn't kind of know exactly what that meant.
Mhm.
And when I got to CBS Sports, she was super nice to me. She sat down with me one day to give me advice, and she said, "Have you ever thought about being a sideline reporter?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't really know even like what that job is." So I really credit Leslie Visser with kind of giving me my career and telling me what it was. And she set up a meeting with me and one of the most legendary voices in all of football, a man named Marty Glickman. That would be another good movie for you. Marty Glickman was kind of the first famous play-by-play announcer.
Huh.
And the story behind Marty Glickman, he did the Jets broadcast for I think 30 or 40 years. He was with the Knicks in Madison Square Garden for a long time. And Marty Glickman was a great athlete back in his day. And he qualified, I forget what it was in, but maybe sprinting to go to the Olympics. But it was during right before or after World War II, and he was Jewish.
Wow.
And so he didn't go to the Olympics. So he turned that passion and love for sports into being an announcer. And he's really credited with being the first best play-by-play announcer. And so I sat down in a cafe on the Upper West Side in New York City with Marty Glickman. And some of the advice he gave me changed my career because he said, the audience should always remember the story that you told. They shouldn't remember you. And
Wow.
by that I mean get out of the way of the story. Is
Man,
tell the story in such a way that it's only about the people in the story. Um,
I love
you know
that.
that yeah, and that people might remember, oh my gosh, I remember watching this great game, but they don't necessarily remember the announcers. And I kind of look at how we are today, and it's like people screaming on TV as the sports personalities of our generation. And I just think we've kind of lost the art of storytelling where it's not about us. So
Right.
I always feel like if I have told a really great story and people later will say, "Oh, I never knew that so and so and blah blah blah." Like I love that.
Huh.
That makes me happy. Some of my best work has been when I just tell it to the booth and 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 I'm the one like in a commercial break, I'll say, "Hey, such and this and this just happened." And I love it, if Chris Fowler or Kirk Herbstreit or back when I used to work with Todd Blackledge and Brad Nessler a lot, they just tell the story and it got
Man.
on the air, and that was always that's the only thing I cared about.
There's a lot of people that it's about flash and style, but I just feel like what makes you distinct is it's always about heart. Like there's this human struggle that you bring to it. How did you to begin to as you took that advice about getting out of the way of the story? How did you kind of establish your style of this is how I tell stories?
I really don't think I've ever conscientiously thought about I really have not thought one day in my life about, okay, here's the style I want, or here's, like, I think I'm just being myself constantly.
Mhm.
But I would say that my curiosity for the story has driven everything. So, like, I'll find out a story and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I just want you to know the story. And I just feel like kind of that passion combined with curiosity, and combined with selflessness, like where it's not about me. I just want you to know the story. I think that's just kind of all combined into that.
Yeah, I would love to know like the kind of the moment where it first clicked that this, the first surreal, moment for you that, whether that was when you first stepped onto a sideline at ESPN or what it was where you're like, oh my gosh, I get to do this. So like for me, it was, I've been doing just a little bit of work with ESPN around the edges, but the crew that we were on, Scott Johnson's crew at the time, the ESPN Prime show, that was the big show. Like that was the one everybody, and now the ABC one that you're on with Herb Street and Fowler is the big show. But when we first started, it was that ESPN show, and I remember when I showed up, they had added me to the crew last minute, and I showed up, and every one of Scott's camera guys, like he hand selects. So even the way I run a film set and how I direct a movie, everything goes back to how I watched Scott Johnson do it. Like I've told him that. Like Scott was not an ego person, but he was very loyal, and you only got on his crew if everybody had vouched for you and you were kind of the DNA he was looking for. And then once you're one of his people, you're one of his people. And then he just lets you do your job and make him look good. But I remember the first time I showed up, I look at the camera list and they had me on the band camera. And it was like way down the list. I was like, that's usually like a college intern or a tripod. Like and I was like, oh, that's beneath me. And I was like embarrassed at first, and I wrestled with it. And then I was like, you know what? If they put me on the camera, I'm going to give him the best darn band shots the man has ever seen. I'm going to work my tail off. And I was younger and in better shape then. So I was running to the top of the stadium and getting all these shots. So they came back and they did another. And that game was Alabama, Oklahoma in 2003. They came back the next year, or not the next year, next week, and did Alabama, Kentucky. I came back, band camera. Okay, great. And then all of a sudden I got a call and they're like, we want you to go to Boston College. And I'm like, they've never flown me anywhere before. And I got to Boston College. It was Florida State Boston College. And I go and I'm like, yeah, I know, band camera. So I went to go find my camera. I can't find it. And they had put it on the sideline. And one of our fellow friends, Tim Two, a camera guy named Tim Two, Tim walks by and he's like, hey kid, you're one of us now. You're on the field. And that's when I found out like I'm on this show full time. And so for you, what was the moment where it clicked? Like, I'm actually going to make it. This is a big deal for me.
Man, I think I'm still waiting for it. I don't know that I've had that. I mean, like I get to work some really big events. But I think I'm still like so starstruck that I even get to do this and I'm getting paid to watch sports every week. But just in line with what you said about the band camera, I want to share one story. So when I like worked my way up, let's say 5 or 6 years into my career, I got assigned to do the Division III National Championship. And I loved doing that game. It's in Roanoke, Virginia every year. And they do such a great job with that game. And I started covering a team called Pacific Lutheran. Mm-hmm. And they had a coach named Frosty Westering. And he was just like in his 70s, just this bigger than life character. He'd been coaching forever. And Pacific Lutheran is this tiny Division III school on the West Coast. And he had a philosophy of life called make the big time where you are. Oh. And he was just so cute. And that team ended up winning the national championship. And I was just so taken with Frosty and just the way he treated his team and his players. And he ended up giving me a copy of his book. And he had written a book, Make the Big Time Where You Are, because all of us are constantly chasing the big time. We're constantly chasing that next job, that next car, that next house. And it makes us dissatisfied with actually where we're standing.
Wow.
And so I would say that moment is the moment that my career really took off, because every game I did, I treated it like it was the big time, whether it was the WAC championship. I remember doing the MAC championship, like Bowling Green and Toledo, and thinking that was the biggest game in the world. And so I just treated every place I was as the biggest, like as my Super Bowl. And so I just feel like I've been really happy, and I've never been one of those grumpy people like, why am I not doing XYZ? Because I'm happy where I am, because where I am is the big time. And why I'm proud of that is because I have stayed working in women's sports for a long time. Yeah. So a lot of people in my position they hit the big time and they get off women's sports because they perceive that they are somehow lower than men's sports. And I never have. No matter how busy my schedule is, no matter if I'm driving through the night, taking red eyes, trying to get from one college football game to my WNBA championship game. And I'm just really loving it because the big time right now is where I am in women's college basketball. So this year, the women's college basketball Final Four had 18.9 million viewers.
That's amazing.
4 million more than the men's Final Four.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that was actually on my list to talk to you about, because you have been such a champion for women's sports. I would, I knew you would never anoint this yourself. I believe you become somewhat of an icon in that arena. Like people, they equate you with being an ambassador for women's sports, and for a long period of time, it was categorized as a stepchild or whatever but to see it come into its own, especially over the past couple of years with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all these people that are bringing just an amazing energy into the sport. What's been your perspective of seeing that kind of happen in real time and being like, this is legit. This is doing something really special. It's a moment.
Yeah, it's really special because I feel like a proud mom. I've been screaming from the rooftops forever. I can't even tell you how many friends I would drag into watching women's sports and like, hey, just give it a chance. If you'll just come to one game, if you'll just come to one WNBA game, if you'll just, and this has been good basketball, good volleyball, good track and field.
Yeah.
All these sports have been really good for a long time. They just haven't gotten like the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I'm really proud of ESPN and ABC because we're now giving women, like, our WNBA championship has been on ABC, like network television in primetime slots. And so people get to choose what they want to watch, and they're choosing women's sports because it's just sports and it's just good. So it feels super satisfying. I'm so proud of everybody, but there's been a lot of good women for a long time who've kind of poured into this.
Yeah.
That have helped build this moment, but now we have the foundation ready for it. And so when Caitlin Clark's going off and making her magic, or Angel Reese is becoming the first rookie to ever get a double-double in the WNBA All-Star game, we're ready for it. And it's on ABC, and we have the platform, and we've built it. So I'm really proud of that. But it all circles back to making the big time where I am. Instead of looking at women's sports as that they were somehow lesser, I looked at them as equal, and I spent equal the time and love and passion building them that I did my men's college basketball or men's college football career. And so I'm proud of it because that adage that Frosty Westering taught me, more than 20 years ago at the Division III national championship game has really shaped my life and my career.
And it's those moments when you get with the old guard and you're able to kind of glean, especially when you're, and that's the thing I encourage people that are maybe a few steps following behind us is stop trying to impress people when you're around a person like that and start trying to understand how they think. And it's just something so powerful when you sit down with the old guard. And one of my favorite things to do now, now my job is on the film side, but the principles kind of apply. So like, I love it when I cast like an older Oscar winner, like an actor that comes in and they're so seasoned and they don't have anything to prove anymore. They just, and I love it when I step onto a set with a John Voight and he elbows me in the ribs and he's like, and you met John at the Woodlawn premiere, but John just elbows me in the ribs. He's like, "Hey kid, do you see what we get to do? We get to go play dress up for 2 hours. This is amazing." And I was like, "Oh, wow. There's a joy to it that you glean as you understand how they think that keeps them working for 60 plus years in a profession." So the fact that you were able to get that gift, like that's so amazing.
Because like John Voight, like people like that you've been able to work with, they love the craft more than they love being famous, right?
Yes.
Then they love the big time. And that is the most important thing. I meet a lot of young people who want to be on TV and want to do my job. I meet very few young people who want to put the work into it and actually care about the craft. So there's a difference. And Any young person that I meet that I can see that they care about the right things instead of just wanting to be on TV or wanting to be famous,
Yeah.
I'll mentor them and I'll spend time helping them. They care about the right things. They don't do it for themselves. They're
Yeah.
doing it for what they can share with other people.
But there's just also something about paying your dues. When I have like we've got a room full of interns around the corner, and whenever any of them come up to me and they're like, I want to be in film, or I want to do what you do, I'll always ask, is there anything else you want to do with your life? And they're like, oh yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. Like, do that. And it's like, but when they come back and they're like, I have to tell stories for a living, then those are the ones like, absolutely, you have a future. Be willing to give 10 or 15 years of your life to honing that, and you're going to be really good at it. And those are the ones that they have the wherewithal to stick with it.
Yeah, you have to have that passion. So this may be too much information to share, but
No,
about a year ago, I was just kind of feeling burned out. And so I actually got a therapist.
I'm all for therapy, by the way. I do therapy all the time.
It has really been helpful to me. And I was just kind of telling her, like, I'm working too much. I'm burned out. I'm just not myself. And I got to get to the bottom of why. And so, we kind of figured out one, everybody will always say this about me. She's the hardest working person in
Yeah.
sports. And I figured out from my therapist that I felt like as a kid, I had to work hard to get my parents' love. And so
Yeah.
I have repeated that model over and over. So that was kind of groundbreaking.
Wow.
So she made me write down a list of everything I'm doing and why. And I have started eliminating things and work that I'm doing that the why isn't good enough. And so in our last session, she just said to me, we've got to focus on your purpose. Like let's make a mission statement of what your purpose is. And it is storytelling. So I love that that's the name
Wow.
of your podcast, because as I figure out, like, why do I do this job? Why do I care about this job so much? I love stories. I'm a voracious reader. I probably read 4 or 5 books a week.
Hmm.
I love stories, and so that's my purpose in life. And so anything I do moving forward with my career, it is going to be around just storytelling, because you can get caught up in a lot of nonsense in this business. I'm sure in your film business, you can
Yeah.
get caught up in a lot of nonsense. And you have to have this laser focus, like you're talking about with your interns, laser focus on what your passion is and what your purpose is. And if you keep laser focused on that purpose, you're going to have a great career because you'll make it happen. You care enough about it to do the work.
That's so good. Thanks for sharing that. Like, because I totally relate to that. I think, and I'm all for therapy. I go once a week myself, so it's an amazing thing just to unlock, understanding how you think and how you process information and all that behind it. But I think that point of view of, it's so easy to get distracted by doing things, and you're just all obsessed with the what. What do I need to do next? What's this? What's that? And to kind of slow it down and be why. Why do I need to do this? Like, what's the why that gets me up in the morning? And like focus everything through that. And so I went through a similar experience of the past year. Our company had gotten larger and we were doing more and more movies, and I'm producing more than I'm directing right now. And which means I facilitate a lot of other people's visions and trying to set them up to win. And we had, the most films that we had ever done in one year had been 2, and we did 4 this year. So it was exhausting. It was exhausting. But I was at that point where I was like, I think I'm hitting burnout. Like, I'm tired. And I sat down with my producing partner and with, some other people and talked through it with my wife, Mandy. And it's like, Andy, it's not about what all you can do any of it, but what's the thing that only you were meant to do? And I honed it down to storytelling and empowering others. And they're like, everything else, throw it off. And so I pulled one of a guy that had worked with me for a while as my right hand person that went to Harvard, was way more educated than I am. And I was like, guess what? You just got a promotion, and but all this is coming to you, and I'm just going to focus on this. And and it ends up empowering him, and it ended up kind of preserving the love of what I do. And then all of a sudden, it's like that spark was back. It's like, this is why I want to do what I do. So the fact that you nailed it down to that's so good. And like, for anybody listening, as far as especially as people that are kind of finding, their voice and their why. What advice would you give to, people that are following into some sort of storytelling, whether that's in sports or others, what advice would you tell them if they're just getting started?
Oh, I think some good advice about storytelling is to really honor the person whose story you are telling. So I've had many experiences, not just ESPN, but any company. It's really hard to keep the story pure. So I'll give you an example. I was doing a story about there's a gal that plays softball at UCLA, and her name is Maya Brady.
Hmm.
And she comes in, she's the freshman of the year. She gets her team to the World Series. She's this incredible athlete with one of the most storied programs in all of college softball, UCLA. And so I'm going to go do a feature about her and how her mom, who also played in the World Series and was an incredible athlete at Fresno State, how the women in her life have driven the competition in their family. Well, it just so happens her uncle is also Tom Brady.
Oh, wow.
So I interview the mom, and it's all going to be centered around the women in the family because Tom has a lot of quotes talking about how his mom is super competitive, their grandma's super competitive, and Tom's older sister Maureen was actually the first Brady to have a sports story and headline written about her in their local newspaper because she was this
Wow.
great softball pitcher. So my story is telling Maya and Maureen's story about how competitive the Brady women are. Well, you know how things work. And then pretty soon Sports Center wants it to be about Tom Brady. And so I get the edited thing back and it's all about Tom and sound bites of Tom. And I'm like, this isn't the story. And I
Wow.
pitched a fit. I
That's
pitched a fit.
amazing. I would have loved to have seen that.
I was so mad because I'm like, Tom Brady gets a lot of stories about him. This story is about Maureen and Maya. And so I fought really hard and I threw such a fit that they capitulated because they just had to get the story done. And I'm sure they're back there like, oh, Holly's so difficult.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about being difficult. It was about having this absolute belief.
Mm.
I knew what the story should be.
Yeah.
So I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning, rewriting the script, getting it done. And it turned out so great. And it was about Maya and it was about Maureen. But, like that happens a lot where other people try to change the story.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Sometimes you have to capitulate to get the story made.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to really fight to stay true with, like, no, I know what the story is because I've listened to these people. And, and I felt really vindicated too, because Tom Brady tweeted the story out and tweeted about how important it was because the women in his family were the driving force to his competition and his competitive nature. And I'm like, yeah, that's the story.
Wow.
Women in his family. So that's just one thing about being true to what you believe the story to be, honoring those people. Because I would have felt horrible if we put a story up that ends up being about Tom after Maureen has let me sit in her home and Maya has let me sit in her home.
Yeah.
So I think being very true to the people you're telling the story about and fighting for that is important.
Well, and even just the instinct to know what the story is. It's like the story is not the low-hanging fruit. The story is a lot of times the thing that people would just walk by and not even notice. You're like, no, no, no. This is what, and so as an advocate for the story, you become the kind of the finger pointing of like, look at this. And this is something that if you look at it, that's the worthwhile thing. And that's the thing that's super interesting, and along the ways, it's like, and usually I know when I found that when it's the part that moves my heart. Like I fight for the audience because I'm the first audience. And it's like the idea of, okay, this is what excites me. This is what sparks my curiosity. That's what I'm going to chase and trust that the audience is going to appreciate what I'm seeing. And you become the advocate for kind of that point of view. So I love that about how you do what you do. The other part that I wanted to ask you about is, you're so careful to stay out of being the story, that you're there to reflect the story. But there have been a couple moments in your life where the story became about you. And I know you went through your battle with cancer, and I had heard about it a little bit early on and just texted you that I was praying for you. But you were very private about it. But there was a moment where you made a pretty bold choice with, I think it was at a WNBA game, with choosing to go with your natural hair after you'd gone through all your cancer treatments. And I remember when I saw it on TV, and I pumped my fist in the air. I was like, "Atta girl." That's like that. It was just so, that had such strength to it, had so much dignity. But I know it probably took. So what was it like? Walk me through that moment, and that for somebody that doesn't like to make it about them, for choosing to have that moment and be so vulnerable. What led to that moment, and tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had two kind of weird moments. When I went out to have my I had a couple of different I had three or four different surgeries as my cancer continued to spread. And at one point I was going to have a surgery and I was going to miss some time at work. And they said, "Hey, do you want us to put out a statement, when you start missing games if people have questions?" And I was like, "No one's going to notice that I'm missing games. No one's going to notice that." So I'm going in to have my surgery, and every person that comes in my room to have me sign some, release form are like, "Oh, are you Holly Rowe from ESPN?" And so I started thinking, "Oh, maybe people are going to find out about this." So I literally just texted our PR person, "Hey, I'm just going in for surgery this morning, just so you know, blah, blah, blah." Like literally just a quick text. And this is no one's fault, but I literally did not mean that. I should have said this is off the record. I don't know what I meant. But anyway, I woke up from my surgery and it was on the ESPN bottom line.
Oh wow.
And that truly was not my intention to be public about it like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think God works in mysterious ways, because it becoming public like that, I got such an outpouring of love and support
Yep.
that I really needed at the time. And maybe I
Yeah.
didn't know I needed it. Um, and so it was okay. It was okay. But then you fast forward and I've lost my hair. I'm bald. I'm trying to wear this wig. I named her Wanda. She was awful.
Wanda.
And Wanda the wig was awful. And I was trying to wear a wig because when you finally do lose your hair, you look sick.
Mhm.
And I felt like I looked sick. And so I remember doing a football game in Austin, Texas, and I was so hot. Notre Dame at Texas, and I'm wearing the wig, and I'm interviewing Shane Buechele after the game, and I'm dying. It's like 105 degrees out, and about
Man.
200 under the wig.
Wow.
And I went from there to a WNBA game, and Candace Parker and Nneka Ogwumike, I went to the shoot around without my wig on, and so they could see my bald head. And they said, "Oh, you look so cute. You look so beautiful. Don't wear the wig. You look fine." And they really encouraged me to go without the wig. And it just so happened that that was their pink game, to bring awareness
Yeah.
to breast
Wow.
cancer. And I did not have breast cancer. Mine was melanoma, but it spread. And I had several surgeries that were similar to what women who have breast cancer go through, just because of where it was located on my chest and my armpit. But so anyway, I just thought, you know what, maybe this is the right game to do that. So I went on national television with my little short, stubby, and it was hard. I looked sick. I definitely looked weird. And then from there, I went and my next game, I think, was at Alabama. And I did an
Yeah.
interview with Nick Saban and, got no hair. And he was so kind and gentle with me. Nick Saban and a lot of coaches were really kind and loving to me. He sent me a box of apples.
I read that.
Yeah, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
That's so Nick.
So Nick and Miss Terry, but I got a lot of love and appreciation from the people that I cover
Mm.
and I'm telling stories about, and that really lifted me up during a hard time in my life.
Man. Well, as your friend, I never got a chance to tell you, but like, when you made that conscious choice, knowing you, I knew what that required, because you just are not the person that shines a spotlight on yourself. But I think it made such a statement, and I don't think it was by accident that it was the pink game. I just think that talk about storylines, like God having a bigger storyline, like it was such a beautiful, honoring moment of solidarity that I just it was a bad A kind of statement. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
You don't, like you said, you don't often realize like what the impact of things will be, but I've had several people, like really hundreds of people come up to me and say it meant something to them. So two that stick out is I had a little 16-year-old girl come up to me at a Kansas Jayhawks game,
Yeah.
and she was going through cancer and she was bald, and she would go to high school and she would try to hide what was going on and wear all these hats. And she said, after you went on TV with your hair off, I did too. I went to high school without my hat.
Wow.
And then I had another female official. She'd been trying to find a wig that would stay on while she was refereeing basketball games, because you're running and you're
Yeah.
sweating. And she was going through breast cancer and had lost her hair. And she said, when you went without your wig on TV, I thought, I'm going to go without my wig,
Wow.
referee these games. So, like, us showing when we're not perfect, I think is important. Like, all
Yeah.
of us kind of lifting each other up and saying, hey, I'm going through something hard right now. But here's what I'm doing. Maybe it will help you in some small way. So I feel like everything does happen for a reason.
Yeah, I think true strength is being able to lead with your weakness. There's a vulnerability that gives permission to other people not to be perfect and to be able to say, "Oh, it's okay. You don't have to be afraid." And I just think when you lead with your weakness, especially when you're a figure that people respect, there's a power in that statement that you don't even know, but people feel it. And so I felt it when I don't remember where I was. I might have been on the road in a hotel, but I turned on just to see what was on ESPN and I saw you there. And I think I like audibly cheered out loud. I was like, "Atta girl, atta girl." So it was a cool moment. Well, as we kind of begin to wrap things up, I just wanted to I always like kind of ending on a movie note. And so, it's unfair for me to put my movies in this category because I'm not going to fish for compliments or be afraid that they don't make the list.
You know, I love your movies. I always love your movies, and I would tell you if I didn't.
And I know that you would tell me if you didn't. So sports movies. What are the top 5 sports movies on Holly Rowe's list? Do you have?
Yes, I have. I have a very distinct idea. Yes. So, my number one sports movie of all time is Brian's Song.
Oh yes.
Brian's Song has impacted my life in a lot of ways because I was a little girl when I watched it. And number one, I fell in love with the Chicago Bears. So I have been a lifelong Chicago Bears fan because of Brian's Song. But number two, it told a story about race. Brian Piccolo and Gail Sayers, and they're forging a friendship back in the 70s when it wasn't popular to be friends, or integrate. And the way those men loved each other. And that is a true story. I've written, I've read the book. I literally today just cleaned out some boxes and I found I have 2 other DVD copies. I probably have 10 copies of Brian's Song.
Wow.
Because I buy it every time I see it. I love it so much. So that one to me is probably number one because I think it's an important story, an important message, and it's true and it's beautiful. Like number two, oh my gosh, that I watch over and over is probably Hoosiers. I actually just got to meet the gentleman who wrote the Hoosiers script.
Yeah.
At an event. And that was really.
Is his name Alfonso or something like that? Yeah. Anyway, no, I met him once as well. He's fantastic. That movie is a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie.
Perfect movie. Obviously, I love Rudy.
Yeah.
That's just an all-time great story, and it's so well done. And Sean Astin, you have then gone on to use in a lot of your movies, which I love.
Yep.
He's been great.
Sean's great.
I wish there was a better movie about women because there's just not enough. That's something that we need to talk about. I have some good ideas for you about the female sports story.
Yep.
So
I would love to follow up with you about that, because finding the right story and you come on as a producer with it, but because somebody was telling me Maya Moore's story the other day, and her story is amazing, but finding the right women's story. So we'll put a pin in that because it doesn't exist yet. So putting a pin in it for the future, we need to come back to a female story because one does not exist that's worthy of Holly Rowe's top 5 list yet. So coming back to that, what are the others that you have? 2 more.
Okay, and then I am gonna put Woodlawn in there because I just was so proud of you. And again, that story has the elements. One, I know some of the characters. It's a true story. I have gotten to cover so much Alabama football that some of those characters, I actually know them, and it's important to me. And the way that it talks about the importance of race coming together, I think sports has been the great unifier. So I do think I'm putting Woodlawn in there. And then, gosh, I need one more. What is the one that I watch over? Remember the Titans. Anytime that comes on, I watch that over and over and over. But man, there's some really good documentaries that have come out about female athletes. The Dream Team came out last summer, and ESPN did a nice job about the women's, Olympic team with Dawn Staley, Rebecca Lobo, that Lisa Leslie, that whole group. That's a good 4-part documentary you could watch. And then the players just did one. Sue Bird and Neko Ogumake just did a documentary. It's on Prime Video about it's called The Power of the
Huh.
Dream, about how the WNBA has used their advocacy to help influence politics and race conversations in this country, and it's
That's
really
amazing.
good. And they used a ton of my footage in there, so I'm really proud of it because a
That's
lot of
cool.
the great shots you'll see, I shot on my camera when we were in the WNBA bubble, so I'm proud of
That's
that one.
amazing. See, you're already producing. It's just we need to put a title to it.
Yeah, I'm a mini filmmaker. Yes, exactly.
Somebody was telling me even like Maya Moore's story the other day, and her story is
Hmm.
fantastic. What she's gone through. Yeah, I just I love that. And with each story, it's just there's something powerful about sports stories because they're normally true stories, and true stories. There's just a power when somebody has lived it. I mean, it's the same thing as what you do in your storytelling. Is you're bringing awareness to real people. It's not something fictional in your head. You're just discovering and giving people a platform to let people know their stories. And that's kind of what we do too. That's why, Woodlawn was a powerful one for us just because it was one I grew up hearing as a bedtime story. Sean Astin in that film plays my dad. My dad is Hank. And so, so to kind of see that one kind of come to life was amazing. And I learned so much personally through that by the people that had lived it and also our cast really educating us and making sure we got their voice authentically represented. So the fact that it makes your top 5 list, I will take that as a badge of honor, and we'll frame it and put it on the wall.
Yeah. Oh gosh, the other thing too is so Jeremiah Castile is a pastor for the Alabama football team,
Right.
and then his son Caleb Castile, who I actually covered as a college football player at
Yep.
Alabama, he is the star of Woodlawn. So I just love it because it's so full circle to our stories that we've covered throughout the years together.
I love it, and I adore Caleb. He just became a dad, but Caleb, he's always been like my kid brother, and so after Woodlawn, because of how he stumbled into it, he did amazing with it. But then he decided to move out to L.A. to pursue acting, and I said, okay, he said I call him little bro. I was like, all right, little bro, you're gonna go out there, and I just want you to know it's not gonna be as easy as Woodlawn. Like everybody out there is gonna be just as trained as you are, if not more. They're all going to be really good looking. They're all going to have a great resume, and you got to go out there and you're going to sweat and you're going to compete, and that's where you become an actor. And he's like, yeah, I got it, big bro, I'm good. And I'm like, all right, okay, cool. So he went out there. About 3 months in, he called me. He's like, bro, this is hard. This is really
A
hard.
lot of rejection. It's a lot of no's.
I was like, suck it up. This is where you become an actor. And then after about a year, he called me, and he had just gotten cast as one of the regulars on NCIS Los Angeles with LL Cool J. He called me in tears. He's like, "Big bro, I made it!" And then
Oh,
he's shot off, and he's doing it. He's living the dream now. So it's kind of cool to see all that come full circle. But it all started for me, on sidelines with my football family, of which you were one of the biggest parts of it, and I just always appreciated that. I would tell people I was going to be a filmmaker one day, and they kind of humor me. But when I looked at you and I would tell you that, I felt like you believed me, and I just you've always been an advocate for us and the stories we tell, and I'm grateful for the friendship that goes 20 years and counting. So you're one of the storytellers I respect the most, and I really appreciate you being a part of the show.
well, you just made me get all misty-eyed now. Like, I did believe you. I'll never forget, you showed me you had done a couple music videos,
Yep.
but when you showed me the documentary about 9/11, I still have my DVD copy. I've still got it, and I keep it
Well,
proudly, like with our good family movies, because I'm so proud of you because that was really the beginning for you. I did believe you because you do what you say and you're a good person, and so I knew you would succeed.
back at you, Holly. We love you, and appreciate you sharing your stories with us. And we're going to keep cheering for you on every sideline we watch.
Thank you so much.
So that's the show today. I want to thank Holly for being on it. What a treat. There was things that I got a chance to hear about her story that I had never heard before. And because Holly doesn't like to make the story about herself, she likes to make it about others. And it's just the way she's wired. But, beyond the courage that it took for her to tell her story about her cancer journey, the thing that I really appreciate about her the most is that idea of being willing to push past the what and get to the why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to get out of bed in the morning? And being able to fight for those things that really motivate you. And for her, she said it was story. And that's why we call this podcast the Storytellers. That's the only thing that matters. I mean, the idea of being famous, the idea of being known, the idea of being recognized, the idea of being validated, the idea of awards, the idea of movie stars, all of that goes away so quickly when it comes to film. The things that last is there a story that you can't get out of your head until you tell the world? And those stories are the ones that literally change people's lives. And that's why we do what we do here at Kingdom. And so I just want to encourage you guys, keep fighting for your stories and push past the what to the why. Take Holly's advice. It's sound advice. So thanks for being a part of the show this week. We'll see you on the next edition of The Storytellers.
The Storytellers is a Kingdom Story Company production. It is produced by Nick Carey, with production assistance from Ben and Justin Bailey, and creative assistance from Jaron Weatherly and Beach Approach. Our executive producers are Kevin Downs and Brandon Gregory. Social media for the show is run by the Troops and Allies team, and our music is Twisted Rooster by Tommy Prophet. Special thanks to our entire team at Kingdom Story Company. To make sure that you never miss out on any of our exciting guests, subscribe to The Storytellers for free on YouTube at Kingdom Story Company or wherever you listen to podcasts. For exclusive first looks at our upcoming films, behind-the-scenes content, and invitations to advanced screenings, join the conversation as a Kingdom Insider at KingdomStoryCompany.com and follow us at Kingdom Story Company across all platforms. As always, thanks for joining Andrew Erwin and his friends on The Storytellers.